18th, 2014 at 3 o'clock. And this is for our work session. First on the agenda is citizens' comments on consent agenda items.
No cards.
And we have no cards. Second is request for clarification of agenda items listed on our agenda. And seeing no hands. Joey?
On consent item J, I was just hoping to get a little clarification, please.
I believe Mr. Burgess would respond to that question. Ms. Falcon, thank you.
Councilman, I provided you some information with regard to this item in your status report. I'll be pleased with the concurrence of council to discuss that now, or if you prefer to go into closed session on that item, we certainly can do that.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay.
On that same thing, I would simply ask, after we have the closed session discussion, which I think is appropriate, I think I would like to pull that for individual consideration because there's going to need to be some explanation given to the public as to what the intent is. Otherwise, it's going to create a lot of heads being scratched, and I think we need to have some explanation.
Sure, absolutely.
That was my reasoning too. I just wanted everybody to know why we're doing it. So.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, council members?
Consider adoption of an ordinance repealing the redundant and inconsistent noise provisions from the Denton Development Code. First, I was thinking redundant and inconsistent noise coming from City Council, but it would be a lot of silence. Consolidating noise enforcement authority and existing provisions of the Denton Code of Ordinances and existing state law, etc.
Mayor and council, over time, the city has enacted inconsistent noise provisions in our code, and this ordinance before you would repeal those redundant provisions and those inconsistent provisions, leaving stand the Chapter 17 noise provisions, which is in our property maintenance code, but otherwise requiring that our ordinances, our codifiers, go ahead and reference those state law provisions, and those state law provisions we believe would be used more frequently and would facilitate investigation of noise complaints in our city and also facilitate the handling of those complaints. So we recommend the ordinance for your consideration tonight.
Councilmember Hawkins.
Yeah, I move approval of consent agenda item 4J.
And Councilmember Gregory.
Second.
And Councilmember Gregory, you have comment?
If I was a resident, especially living close to one of the places where we've had drilling recently, I would be very concerned about this, and I probably wouldn't understand what the city attorney said about it's facilitating this and it's facilitating that. Would she care to give it a go in layman's language, or maybe the city manager or someone else would like to once again explain what we think that we're doing on behalf of the residents by making this amendment?
If I could, Mr. Gregory, I think what the city attorney said and what we discussed with council is that this ordinance will make it more consistent and easier for the city to implement enforcement of noise objections, whether it's from gas wells or others. It's making those noise regulations consistent so that we can handle them in the same way that we handle at gas well sites, the same way we handle them in other areas of the city and with other noise complaints. Over time, as we've implemented the ordinance for gas well regulation, we've come across these inconsistencies. We've, in fact, with the recommendations that we made to council on the gas well ordinance, created those inconsistencies and made it more difficult to enforce, particularly noise requirements within that ordinance. This is going to make that easier for us to do to benefit the residents of the city who live in proximity to gas wells.
Okay. Councilmember Hawkins. Yes.
You may
Maybe they are still there.
Oh,
we've
sorry.
already done that. Sorry. Yeah, this was my additional comment. Any other comments? Motion been made and seconded to approve item 4J as stated. Any further comments? Seeing none, let's vote on the board. The motion dies for lack of a computer. Do you want us to vote? Okay, so do it the manual way? Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve agenda item 4J. All in favor, raise your right hand. And that motion is approved unanimously.